Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever the fuck you're tuning in. This is the last off-season episode of the Rosinbaggers podcast. Feels like it's been a little bit because it's been a little bit. We missed you last week. Glad to be back this week. But it feels even better to know that tomorrow, Ty, is opening day.
What is the magical song that they sing at Christmas time? It's the most wonderful time of the year, and it truly is. The presents will be all upon our fingertips tomorrow afternoon as opening day gets underway. As they say, hope springs eternal, and it is 0-0 for everybody in Major League Baseball, except for the Washington Nationals, who are probably going to start off 0-1. Like, you just start like -5 runs right off the bat because you're Washington. You're going to be at the ballpark. We'll talk about that more on that in just a little bit. I always love going down to a ballpark on opening day, and there's no better experience than opening day for a baseball fan at a Major League ballpark. And I don't care what city you attend and what Major League Baseball franchise you support on opening day. It is an atmosphere unlike any other I have been to two in my lifetime. It's a fantastic experience. And so I wish you the truly best opening day blessings as you get set to embark upon your journey to Nats Park. Again, we'll talk more on that here in a little bit for your series preview. But yes, opening day, there is so much excitement surrounding Major League Baseball here for 2023. I've got a drinking game that we're going to talk about a little bit later here on the show, as we've got our opening day bingo cards available and ready to roll. Listen, the only thing is this should be a national holiday, and I speak from the heart when I say I back Ozzie Smith 100%. The Wizard for St. Louis has been actively working with Anheuser-Busch, another St. Louis product, to try to make opening day a national holiday. It seems to be picking up steam, but I think we need to get more people just to white knuckle and say, listen, I'm not showing up to the office tomorrow. I'm going to watch baseball. Although I don't recommend it if you're like walking on eggshells or you're thin ice at your place of employment.
Sure.
That's not a good idea. But if you got a little job security, go ahead and kick back, watch a little baseball tomorrow. It's going to be great. Opening day, baby. Let's go.
Yes, sir. You mentioned you've been to two. Tomorrow, in fact, will be my second.
Nice.
I went to opening day, I believe it was 3 years ago, Nats opening against the Mets. Nats actually won that game. I'm not holding out too much hope that the Nats are going to win this game. So we'll see. I'm excited because tomorrow is probably as full as that stadium's going to be all year.
That's fair.
Anyway, so let's jump in. We're going to do a quick rundown of the NL West because we didn't get to it last week. So what I kind of would like to do, Ty, let's maybe keep it abbreviated. I think we can go bottom to top. So tell me who you've got finishing last in the NL West.
I don't like it. I really don't, because I legitimately like the franchise and I want them to be successful, but there's absolutely nothing going on right now to get you excited about Colorado Rockies baseball. Listen, CJ Cron's going to hit some bombs for him this year, sure, from the offensive perspective. Their pitching is still a disaster. They lose Connor Joe, which was kind of a key spark plug in that lineup, I thought, at times last year. There's just not a lot going on for Colorado right now. You hope for good health and a full season for Chris Bryant, so he at least has 162 games in the thin air altitude and is able to launch a couple bombs to help his career stat. But mercy sakes, 5 through 9, this bottom half of the lineup is AA at best, in my opinion. I don't see this team going very far. I see this team struggling to win 60. Colorado is going to struggle, and it sucks for them.
Yeah, I was a little tossed up between the Rockies and the team I have in fourth.
Sure.
Another team that I look at the lineup and I don't know where it scares you, but you're absolutely right with the Rockies, right? If Chris Bryant's healthy, if they can find a way to get one more bopper in that lineup, maybe they start to scare some people at home and they can win, maybe they win 30 to 40 games at home. They're going to struggle on the road. The Rockies usually, the run differential on the road is pretty paltry. And 60 feels like the number. My ceiling for the Rockies is 65.
Sure.
Honestly, this feels like a 100-loss team. maybe they can get to 65 and avoid triple digits in the loss column, but it's going to be a long season because they don't even have, at times in the past, they had guys like Mike Hampton that maybe could give you some hope on the pitching side. They don't really have any pitching either.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this team is going to be battling the Nats for last in the National League this season. So I'm with you on that. So talk to me about your fourth place finisher.
Fourth place finisher may come as a little bit of a surprise. I actually don't have where most people have predicted the fourth place finisher. I'm going to move them up slightly, and I'm going to throw San Francisco down a notch into that fourth spot. And it's based on literally, it's not on the rotation standpoint. The rotation is average. It's good. It's fine. It'll win you some games. These are guys that are going to Webb, Cobb, and Manaea and Ross Stripling specifically are going to take the ball, and they're going to go deep. They'll get you 5 or 6 innings. I'm not confident that this offense has enough pop to hang around in ball games. Jock Peterson will add some pop certainly to the lineup. Brandon Crawford is a very solid everyday player, as is David VR. But the lineup as a whole, 1 through 9, isn't that strong and quite frankly isn't that threatening to me. And I don't think that it's pieced at any point in time where you're going to run into a jam in the middle, in the heart of the order, where 3, 4, 5 are going to cause additional stress to some starting pitching. I think the lineup's a little bit weak here in San Francisco, and I think they lost some pretty good pieces to some pretty good veteran pieces to some other ball clubs that would have helped gel and mold this lineup together. I can see this getting really rocky, getting really shaky. I'm not saying San Francisco is going to tank by any stretch. I'm thinking probably a 75-game winner, but I can definitely see points in the season where they go a long time without picking up a W. Like they'll have streaks of 9, 10-game losses followed up by some sporadic wins here and there, but nothing in terms of consistency that has me putting has me putting San Francisco in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, I actually was wondering whether or not I'd be on the island here with San Francisco at 4.
Okay.
It sounds like you feel similarly. I'm actually not nearly as bullish as you. 75 for me is a stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I've got them 65 capped at about 70 wins. The lineup is bad. The lineup is bad across the board. They have almost no pop in the lineup at all. Like
zero power.
Maybe they can get 20 bombs out of Crawford. Maybe. But I look at Sean Manaea as the stopper here for San Francisco this year on a bad team. I also look at San Francisco as sellers at the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And I see 2, maybe 3 spots where they can kind of reload that minor league system. Manaea, I think, would possibly be on the block at the deadline. And then maybe one of these kind of middle infielder, corner infielders. But there's just not a lot to get excited about with this Giants team. So 65 is kind of where I think they're going to finish. 70s where I cap them out in terms of wins. So I'm a little more pessimistic about the Giants than you are.
And poor Jock Peterson, because I feel like this guy is going to be like one of the most wildly traveled baseball players when it's all said and done. There's just not a lot of spot for him because his game is quite frankly so one-dimensional that not a lot of teams have some space for him on the lineup. So yeah, I see them selling at the deadline.
And then they're moving him to first base too,
right?
In maybe a team buys at the deadline and puts him back in left field, but you're talking about Jock. You're going to get 20 bombs out of him, maybe 25 as a ceiling. That's not enough for a first baseman in Major League Baseball, right? And that goes back to the whole there's no pop in this lineup,
right? And the threat of a triple-digit strikeout number too.
Oh, for sure.
Let alone your 25 pops.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, all right. We're in lockstep on where they finish. I'm a little more pessimistic about the win total on the Giants. So talk to me about third place. Who you got there? I think we might be in line on this one too.
I think we're in line. I almost wanted to move them a little bit higher, mainly because if I'm going to take a dark horse, I'm going to bet on my dark horse, and I'm going to follow that dark horse a little bit. I got a dark horse in the National League West in the form of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I'm really excited about what Arizona did in the offseason. They didn't make splash moves. They didn't make the big, holy crap, look what Arizona did, but they have got all of the right pieces in place on a good budget, getting good contract numbers and really building, quite frankly, a pretty solid ball club that's going to make a run at the postseason. I am not going to be so gung-ho on my dark horse to say postseason or bust for the Diamondbacks. I feel like this Arizona team is exactly where Baltimore was a year ago, minus the young guy and the highly touted prospect that got a lot of people excited for them originally. But I think a lot of people are going to be able to get on board with the middle of this lineup with Walker and Rojas, and I love the addition of Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and I love for him to finally get the opportunity to be the guy in the outfield. He was maybe ninth best in Toronto because just based on the star power around him, he never got the opportunity to lead and to shine. And now he gets that opportunity here. And then you've already have one of the most incredibly talented from an athletic standpoint, all the tools you want out of a middle infielder in Ketel Marte. He's an absolute baller. This team has got the potential. I love Alec Thomas as a young outfielder out in center, not only from what he can do with the bat perspective, but his defensive ability as well. And then, their rotation is as solid as it's ever been for Arizona. Yes, Madison Bumgarner is aging. Yes, he does not have his Madison Bumgarner stuff of a World Series run long ago with San Francisco, but Madison Bumgarner is still Madison Bumgarner, and that's still 5 to 6 quality innings.
They're also not asking him
correct
to be a number one, right? Because they've got two guys.
Yep,
Merrill are going to be 1A and 1B for them.
Yeah,
and they're gonna ask Mad Bum to give them a quality start every fifth day as the third starter. And I think that's what he can give them. That's where he is in his career.
And I think it's a better role for him than where he was at a year ago.
Yeah.
Where he was asked to take on a much bigger load and a much bigger role.
Leadership. And
now he just gets to pitch. And now he just gets to go on the hill and do what he does. I love.
Giants have been up and down in the preseason, so we'll see.
A little consistency issues. Listen, Arizona, I'm not going to say we make the postseason for the Diamondbacks, but I'm going to say they make a nice little run at it, and I'm going to say that they give their fans something to be excited about in September, which is something that Arizona has not had in a very long time. The Diamondbacks will make a huge jump this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love the young core. Corbin Carroll is a guy that I think is going to emerge as a star. I love that you brought up the Orioles because I thought about this team and kind of where they're at and what there is to be excited about in Arizona. And we had Adley last year, right? With Baltimore. Is he going to be up? Is he going to play the whole season? Yada, yada, yada. And I think what happened with the Diamondbacks is they are muddled in the AL West. They have clearly been rebuilding. They have clearly been pushing to get younger. And I think they made their move in terms of their roster move a year ago with Carroll's now on the everyday roster, Gallen and Kelly. And I just think that they sneakily, quietly did what Baltimore did last year in terms of the youth movement, did it during a 65, what they won 68 games last year. And they play in the same division as the Dodgers and the Padres, right? So like it's easy to quietly make these moves.
Extremely.
I'm with you. So when I flip-flopped on the Marlins a few episodes ago, this is the other team I was considering for a wild card spot.
Okay.
So I had to adjust fire because I moved the Marlins into a playoff spot. No. So I have to drop the Diamondbacks out of the playoffs, but I still have them winning 80 to 84 games this year. I think they are going to take a huge, huge leap in a very competitive AL West.
I'm ready.
There's meat on the bone when you're playing Colorado and San Francisco this year.
I'm right at 80. I think 80 is solid for Arizona.
Excellent. All right, so let's get to kind of the nitty gritty of this division. So, second place, who you got as the bridesmaid in this division this year?
It's one team that I wanted to take down into that third spot, like I mentioned, and it's the Padres. I have the Padres I know a lot of people are extremely excited about what they have in terms of a batting lineup with the addition of Xander Bogaerts. Obviously, you hope for a slight bounce back from Juan Soto, a Juan Soto where he takes a hell of a lot less pressure off himself. I think he came into that trade deadline with such a splash, and it exploded to the point where he didn't settle into the Juan Soto that made him so special in Washington. I think that there was expectations that he put on himself that were unrealistic to achieve, and you hope to settle that down a little bit. Obviously, Manny Machado is going to continue to be Manny Machado, but apart from those additions, you're still kind of in the waiting game, the wait and see on how things develop throughout the course of this Tatis suspension, and there's still there's question marks in San Diego, and for me, the biggest question marks are on this rotation. As much as these names stick out, these names also have been trending at a fairly rapid pace with developmental digression, I would say. Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Michael Wacha, all three at one point in their career had damn near unhittable stuff. But the control issues that all three of these pitchers, quite frankly, have faced, and we saw it with Yu Darvish in the World Baseball Classic, it wasn't a great relief appearance, even though they were able to close down the United States. It was wobbly at times against the United States. His stuff is no longer that consistent. Oh my God, it's Yu Darvish. We might as well just sit in the dugout and not even go up to the plate. It's hittable. The pitching rotation has some question marks. At the end of the day, I still think that they can get enough done with the offense that they have in place to be a second place team, but not finishing that much higher than Arizona. Getting into the playoffs, making a wild card berth because of where the rest of this National League might fall in terms of the standings. We already mentioned we had New York slipping back. We had Philadelphia slipping way back. Miami was on the upswing. Pittsburgh was on the upswing. Are they there? We don't know. I think San Diego slides into a playoff spot, but I don't think it's 90. I mean, it's 89, it's 88 wins for me with San Diego. I am not near as excited about the Padres as maybe the national media is, and I think that they want to paint this competitive picture in the National League West. They want to paint it as Padres and Dodgers, and they want to make it like a Yankees Red Sox style rivalry. It's not there yet, and the Padres aren't there yet. And I still think even at 89 or 88 wins, they'll finish a distant second.
Yeah, I went back and forth on San Diego and the Dodgers because I do believe that the Padres are going to be more along the lines of Slam Diego this year than what they were last year, which was a slow starting team that got hot around the All-Star break, cooled off a little bit, but then picked it back up late in the season, despite Juan Soto's troubles. You mentioned the Juan Soto struggles. And my dad says San Diego is an awesome city. Yeah, for sure. It's such a beautiful city.
The mannequins are gorgeous in San Diego, man. Like I'm walking
down the
mall, I'm like, oh man, she's hot. And then, like my teacher's like, that's a mannequin. I'm like, damn, she's good.
Damn, that's a hell of a mannequin. Yeah, I was stationed out there for a little over a year. My dad came out and visited, so real nice city. But I sort of was really optimistic for a little bit, and then I started looking at the rotation, and I thought this team is primed for a lot of 10-8 wins and a lot of 10-8 losses this year. So I settled on 91 wins. That's where I settled at. Because of how soon in the season they're going to get Tatis back, I'm optimistic about the lineup. I do think Soto's going to take the pressure off of himself this year that he put on himself last year. Not only after the deadline, but he had put the pressure on himself before the deadline to really make a case for himself. He struggled in Washington quite a bit last year too. So 91 is where I settled. I wanted to make this division more competitive because I like divisions when they're competitive like this with two horses. But I couldn't get there with the rotation of San Diego. If Joe Musgrove carries this rotation and you get pretty good Michael Waka and you get pretty good Yu Darvish, maybe they can win closer to 100 games, but 91, that's where I settled.
I like it.
All right. Talk to me about the Dodgers then, bud.
I will. Because right now, I think a lot of people listening to the pod are going to take a look and say, man, you do realize that the Dodgers are not the 2022 Dodgers, right? Like, you do realize that the Dodgers regressed at a fairly significant clip in terms of the players that they shipped off during the offseason. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I know exactly what LA did in the offseason. But they're still the Dodgers. And here's my reasoning for putting the Dodgers in the top flight in 93, because honestly, at the end of the day, I'm looking at this lineup and I'm looking at this pitching rotation and what they have. And yes, on both fronts, they're key pieces away. They are some significant key pieces away from making a postseason run as this lineup currently stands. It's the Dodgers. They ain't done. They're going to trade, and they'll trade at the deadline, and they'll get their guys. They'll make that postseason push. LA is not going to just sit back and say, we're going to have a rebuilding year as a franchise. They have the opportunity, and they've got the budget, and they've got the money to. I don't think they know who they want to get yet. I don't think they wanted to make that play in the offseason to pick up that piece. I think that there are players that they are going to be taking a good, hard look at from a scouting perspective and seeing what guy do we want to give the at this point, $100 million contract to, because let's face it, the way contracts are going. And here's one player I will throw right off the bat, because I think his name is being widely circulated, and it's not the Ohtanis and it's not the Trout. If Philadelphia is 5 games back at the trade deadline, Aaron Nola ain't sticking around to get a ring in Philadelphia. And Aaron Nola immediately becomes an ace in LA. I see the Dodgers trading for a starting pitcher. I see the Dodgers trading for a middle infielder. Unfortunately, the Dodgers had a plan when they chipped off Trey Turner. That plan was Gavin Lux.
Yep.
That plan has fallen through a season-ending injury, and you hate to see that for any guy that had the opportunity to be the guy wearing Dodger blue in the middle infield. There's no greater pride in baseball than that opportunity, given the great middle infielders throughout that franchise's history. So that's horrible news, but they'll go get a middle infielder to secure things. And you look at Tampa and maybe an Isaac Paredes, an overloaded middle infield in Tampa right now for a system that loves farm prospects that will jump at the opportunity to pick up a few picks in the draft and pick up some more prospects for their farm system, because that's what Tampa is all about. And if you got a middle of the road guy that's going to produce for a franchise, and they're giving you X number of, basically infinite number of picks and prospects to choose from, Tampa's going to jump on it and load up the farm again. I see the Dodgers making the moves irregardless of how the roster looks on opening day, making enough moves to get to a postseason push and still put them right at 95 and an NL West crown. I really do.
Yeah, 95. I'm between 95 and 98. I was right about 97, but range 95 to 98 wins. I'm with you. They're buyers at the deadline. They're going to be big time buyers at the deadline. They're going to be calling every team in the league to fix what they lost with Lux. I think they might even make a move before the deadline. They could be early movers, in the middle infield, because I think they're going to try with what they've got, but looking at what they've got, I don't think it's enough. But as you said, they're aggressive. They're willing to be aggressive, and they're willing to pay money. So you're looking at guys who might be close to a deal, that sort of thing. I wouldn't count out the Ohtani move either, because I think that satisfies two things for them, with one exception. They have JD Martinez, who can't play the field either. So I don't know if that's a fit necessarily, because they're not going to put Ohtani in right field, despite the fact that he can play right field. No team's going to put him in the outfield now that they've got the DH in both leagues.
How would you like to get traded and not have to move, by the way? Like, how great
Yeah,
would
just go across town. Yeah. I got to drive a little farther to the stadium. Oh, no. But I do worry that I don't count them out on Ohtani, but also I don't know how they make it work with the roster because of
Yep.
JD Martinez.
I think it's too full. I don't think there's
so
they got the wiggle room.
It might not be an LA move for Ohtani if Ohtani moves at the deadline. It might be the other big city on the other coast.
Yeah, let's not talk about that city.
But yeah, so 95, 98, 97 wins is where I've got them. Cruising, coasting to the crown, moving at the deadline, getting a starting pitcher, like you said, middle infield. They've got to make a move. I wouldn't be surprised if that move was made before the deadline, maybe even in like June, as early as June. So
right. I was just gonna say, how long do you give the experiment? Right. I think that's the question.
Yeah, if I'm being super aggressive, maybe I say mid-May.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the move. I don't think it lasts super long, and I don't think they'll be happy if it's not going well. They are in win now, and they've been in win now for 5 years now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 500 is unacceptable in LA right now.
Right, and if they're scuffling as a team and the middle infield is not producing, yeah, I'm with you. That makes too much sense for them to be movers there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they got aggressive early before the deadline, even if they have to give up a couple of, maybe an extra prospect or two to make that move early.
Yep.
All right, cool. So I think what we're gonna do is we are gonna do our salute to service before we transition into our preview of the upcoming season. So, brought to you by Folds of Honor. This segment we dedicate to a fallen member every episode, and we call it our salute to service. All right, this episode goes out to Gunnery Sergeant Scott Koppenhaffer. He died August 11th, 2019, serving during Operation Inherent Resolve. At the time of his death, he was 35, from Mancos, Colorado. Him and his company were engaged by enemy small arms fire while advising and accompanying Iraqi security forces in Nineveh province, Iraq. Koppenhaffer had been awarded 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Combat Action Ribbons over his nearly 14-year career. Gunnery Sergeant Koppenhaffer, we have to watch. All right, let's bring the energy up a little bit and let's start talking about the upcoming season. All right, so I want to start with a little bit of preview here. We're going to do awards before we get talking about the ultimate prize, the World Series. So, Ty, let's start with Cy Young, and let's start in the American League because we had last year we had some tough luck with Lucas Giolito. Are you going to rebound this year?
Man, I don't know. The Lucas Giolito pick was mind-boggling, wasn't it? Unless you watched the White Sox, honestly, in September, where Lucas Giolito just magically found his stuff.
He figured it out. It was
like, crazy. Dude, where were you all year? Your ERA was at 7. That's where he was. Listen, the American League, I would have came out on day 1. If we did our pod 6 weeks ago, like we did, and we did projections on day 1 and awards, I was going to give it to Tristan McKenzie. I really was. The guy was lights out, and even more lights out in postseason. And I think that's what sold me on Tristan McKenzie was watching him last year at the Guardians up close, front and center. It's just, I don't watch a lot of Guardians baseball throughout my daily day-to-day operations. But getting to see him in the spotlight was huge, and he is so impressive. He was easily my Cy Young pick. His injury gives me a lot of pause and a lot of concern because even if he bounces back and is healthy and gets back on the bump, from the pitching standpoint, having been a pitcher yourself, it's not easy to get right back up to full speed after a rehab stint. And there's going to be weeks where you build back up to 100%.
I think the timeline is the biggest thing too, because they're talking potentially
100%.
8 weeks, which is a good chunk of the season for one, and two, like you said, right, a long layoff like that to get back to being a starting pitcher. If you're a closer, you got there 100% every pitch, whatever. But as a starting pitcher, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Because I always say, yeah, you take 8 weeks off, it's probably going to be another 8 weeks before you're back to 100%, even if you're on the hill 8 weeks later. Right. It's tough. And God dang it, do I dare go back to Chicago, a place where we had so much success. But I'm a huge fan of the stash, man, and I can't stay away from it. And at the end of the day, I'm looking at potential Cy Young Award winners, and I'm saying, screw the stash, screw Dylan Cease. He's going to finish runner-up. I'm gonna bank on it, and it's incredibly difficult to do. But pound for pound, if healthy, in a new environment, in a new ballpark, I'm going to stick with my guns and go Jacob deGrom in Texas. I like the play. I like the move. I don't see another favorite front runner than if Jacob deGrom goes an entire season. But it is asterisk, and the caveat is, can you play a full season? And to this point, he has been unable. You hope for good health for Jacob deGrom. I like him as a Ranger. I like him to win a Cy Young.
So I'm going to extend you an olive branch, because we both know Jacob deGrom, it's always the X factor of health, right? So that asterisk, I'm going to give you the opportunity to pick an alternate.
Yeah.
I'll go with Dylan Cease.
I'm going to go with my runner-up, Dylan Cease. Okay. His breakthrough 2021 campaign.
Yeah.
I just his ERA stays so damn low, and he's such a good pitcher, and his break on that slider is so nasty. I'll stay in Chicago with my Cy Young Award winner. At some point, if you continue to bet on black when you play roulette, at some point the wheel spins and it hits black. I don't know how much money I'm going to have to lose before it spins and hits black, but I'm going to keep my money on the White Sox.
Only celebrate the wins.
That's absolutely right. Dylan Cease for runner-up.
Awesome. Yeah, right. I look at deGrom and I say, if you told me that he was going to make 25 starts this year, I don't need all 30. Mm-hmm. I just need 25 of those 30. Then I think he wins the Cy Young. But my gut tells me I'm going to get 12 to 15 starts from Jacob deGrom this year, and that pains me to say, because I was a year ahead of my time last year with Texas, and I'm still pretty bullish on the Rangers this year. I think they're going to win a lot of games, but I don't think they're going to win a lot of games because deGrom starts 25 games. So I pivoted off of deGrom, and I love your asterisk, right? He's healthy. I think he's the best pitcher in baseball. But I'm going to go back to Cleveland, and not Tristan McKenzie, but I've got Biebs.
Baby.
Yeah. Oh. I've got Shane Bieber winning the Cy Young. I think he is Mr. Quiet Consistency, Mr. Reliable, and maybe the quietest 200 strikeout guy in recent memory at a minimum. And I think he's going to have a sub-3 ERA. I think Cleveland's going to win a lot of games this year. I think he's going to get 15, maybe 18 wins. And I look at Shane Bieber as my Cy Young pick in the NL.
All right. I like that. I have no arguments with that.
I think I said NL a moment ago. I was getting ahead of myself. Let's go to the NL and let's talk. Who you got winning the Cy Young in the NL, Ty?
All right. This can be fun. And it's going to be fun for Pops, in particular, who's listening back, because we're going to take an Atlanta Brave. But I'm not going to take the ace of the Atlanta Braves staff. I'm going to take the Rookie of the Year runner-up from a year ago. And there's a little math. One the stash, because obviously taking Dylan Cease in the American League, I'm going to stick with the stash in the National League. But here's why I like Spencer Strider. First of all, his stuff is absolutely lethal, and the fastball slider combination, it might be one of the best from an up and coming baseball player that we've seen in a long time. 24 years old, I think he has all the developments of being a career ace in Atlanta. But what I also like is where he is positioned in the pitching rotation, and not having to be the guy sometimes makes you a stronger Cy Young candidate because you're not going up against the guy on the other team. Thus, your team is scoring more runs, your win total inflates, and you've got nasty stuff that's going to be able to put you statistically backing up with the wins. Give me the two-man on the ATL rotation. Give me last year's Rookie of the Year, Strider, to win the Cy Young.
I like it. It's a little off the beaten path too, and that's what I like about it. I'm going to go off the beaten path as well, but I'm going to build up to it.
Okay.
So I considered Mr. Alcantara, who
why not
is so dominant. I think there were 16 shutouts last year, and he had like 6 of them. There were 31, I believe, complete games last year, and he had 11 of them. So it is very hard to say he won't repeat, but he set the bar pretty fucking high last year. It's going to be hard to live up to that.
It's also really hard to repeat.
Exactly.
As much as you can say, yeah, I mean, those numbers are super unachievable. It's really hard to do it twice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you're almost a victim of your own success sometimes, right? Where I think you're going to look at it and you're going to say, yeah, but you did this last year.
What a down year for
Yeah, you only had 5 complete games and 3 yeah, right? So I did pivot off him, and I considered Max Fried. I did not consider Spencer. I love that pick.
Thank you.
I considered Max Fried because I think the Braves, obviously, I picked them to break the record for wins. I think they're going to win a ton. I think they might have 2 20-game winners on this roster. I think it might be Max Fried and it might be Spencer Strider, both winning 20 games because they are going to mash all the time. I may be a little bullish on the win numbers for the pitchers, but I think it's very possible that they could have 2 20-game winners. And Max Fried is filthy. He's the leader of that pack. He's the ace. But as you said, he faces a lot of ones. Maybe he takes a couple of knocks there in the L column that could, kind of hinder his race a little bit. But I'm going off the beaten path. I'm going with the elder statesman. I'm staying in the same division, but I'm going Justin Verlander in that very, very pitcher-friendly ballpark up there in Queens.
Yeah.
And I just think that what I saw from him last year tells me that he's getting better with age. It's unbelievable because he doesn't throw hard, like he doesn't throw 100 miles an hour like he used to, but he nibbles and he's a bulldog, and his breaking stuff, he has better command of it. And in that friendly ballpark for a pitcher, he did what he did in a BAM box in Houston. Going to New York in a better ballpark for pitchers, I think that Justin Verlander is going to win the NL Cy Young this year.
And listen, I have absolutely no valid reason to argue with you other than personal pride, because like 3 years ago, I basically put Justin Verlander on a shelf and I'm like, okay, you'll be a relic that we'll remember in about 10 to 15 years when you go into the Hall of Fame. You had a hell of a career. It's time to hang it up. And he has continued to take the hill, and he's continued to defy age. And like you mentioned, it's getting better with age. Had I not put him mentally on a shelf, like where I put Tom Brady when he left the Patriots, like they're the same person, and they continue to just defy logic and age. And I'm at 37 years old and hurt my hip getting off the couch, and I watch you go pitch 9 innings scoreless and win Cy Youngs at 40 and hang out with Kate Upton. Like,
yeah,
okay. Spite enters into the equation. Is why I don't give you a prediction. I'm going to give it to a 24-year-old kid with a stash instead. Okay. Justin's a great pitcher. It's a great pick for Cy Young. I would be remiss if I didn't say I considered it. But But again, mentally putting a veteran on the shelf 3 years ago, I kind of try to keep him out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, you put him on the shelf 3 years ago, and then Kate Upton with her voodoo magic entered the chat, and he found the Fountain of Youth wherever she's hiding it.
If anybody's got a fountain of youth, I bet Kate Upton has a fountain of
Oh,
youth.
100%. Oh, all right. Let's go to AL MVP. Talk to me about who you think's going to win the MVP in the AL.
I'm looking at the American League, and it's hard for me. Two guys come out ahead of the pack, and I looked honestly at the most complete baseball player among the two. My two front runners, 1A and 1B, is Vlad Guerrero Jr. in Toronto, because of the numbers that he just puts up. And when you take a look at the Excel spreadsheet and you do all the sorting and you're looking at a potential MVP and Vlad Guerrero's at the top of every statistical category, it's generally a pretty easy decision where you want to go. But the most complete baseball player I feel in the American League, all tools, all abilities, is Jose Ramirez in Cleveland.
Ooh.
And the numbers are just so outstanding in terms of what he's able to do. He's 2020 guy for 4 straight seasons, and he's consistently put up these triple digit RBI numbers, and he's always at the top of these statistical categories. And if Cleveland does a little bit better than they did a year ago in terms of securing that American League Central spot, which I think they do. I think they win this race going away this year in the Central, as opposed to being in kind of that dogfight. They struggled a little bit at times last year, and they had some rough patches, and they did not play the way they played in the postseason throughout the course of the regular season. And I think that there's a lot
They
of
were in 4th place, like in mid-July.
Yeah, I think there's
in a terrible division.
Yeah, there's momentum in Cleveland right now. I think Cleveland has a strong year, and I think one of the reasons they have that strong year, like you mentioned it, with Biebs, but then on the offensive end, you got Jose Ramirez, and I think people are going to take that into consideration. I put him at the front because he is the more complete baseball player. Is Vlad ultimately probably going to lead more statistical categories than Jose Ramirez? Yes. Is it all about stats? No. Vlad Guerrero is going to play the role of being a really great player on a really great baseball team with really great talent around him, where Jose Ramirez is going to have the opportunity to go, hey, look what I did, and I don't have near the help that Vlad's got. And it's all down to where Aaron Judge was at a year ago. If they're going to continue to pitch to the guy, he's going to continue to mash. It'll be interesting this year, but Jose Ramirez would be my personal selection for most valuable player.
Nice. So I had about a handful. The AL, I feel like there's, despite the fact that the DH has made its way to the NL, I still feel like the AL feels like the power, right? The power pennant. It's Mash City, it's home runs, it's a lot of runs. Then I think about the NL, and they scored almost as many runs last year as the AL teams combined. So, like, I've got to kind of break that preconceived notion of that. But I did have 5 names that I was like, okay, Ohtani plays both ways, right? Doesn't play the field, but he DHs, he pitches. I had thought about the defending MVP and Aaron Judge. Sure. I'm not bullish on him this year. I think he finishes with less than 40 home runs.
Same.
I think he struggles at the plate, probably strikes out 200 times. And then I had Vlad Guerrero. I did consider Jose Ramirez, and then I'm going to save it, but I had my final choice, who I think we're going to have a Triple Crown winner. I'll spoil that. I think we're going to have a Triple Crown winner this year, and it's not going to be Vlad Guerrero Jr., despite the fact that I think Vlad's going to finish second possibly in every category, which would be fucking unbelievable.
Are we doing Julio? Who?
I won't spoil it yet.
Okay.
Although I did give Julio some consideration. I will spoil that. It's not Julio. So I go back to Shohei, and I have a question for you before I get into kind of why I eliminated the other 3. Do you think Shohei has won his one and only MVP because we're so spoiled by Shohei?
155%.
Doesn't that suck?
Maybe a little higher.
Yeah.
I mean, honest to God, it's at this point.
The dude's a unicorn, and we're gonna give a guy who does one thing well last year an MVP. It feels like the voters are never gonna give Shohei the credit for what he does.
Unless Anaheim's playing winning baseball.
I agree. If they can win some games, if he gets to a winning baseball team, or he does something Herculean like, pitch and hit a bunch of home runs, which he did last year.
Right, which he still already does.
Right.
To me, we're spoiled on Shohei, and we have been spoiled on Shohei, and it becomes such a mind-blowing phenomenon that we witness that we don't even really consider the fact that, it's literally the best thing that we're watching in baseball. And B, it's a Heisman Trophy scenario for me. It's not, if you're not on the winning team, if you're not on a front runner, if you're not on a team that's going to be playing October baseball, it is hard for baseball writers to push that pin down on your ballot. I think it's a byproduct of just being not on a great baseball team, and that sucks. Yeah. You're right, 150%.
Yeah, for sure. And then Judge, I mentioned I'm not high on him. I don't think he's going to have the year he had last year. Vlad Jr., I think he's going to finish probably second or top 5 in every category. And then, Ramirez, I think, is a fantastic player. I just don't like Cleveland. It just seems like doesn't always get the attention they deserve for that. And I don't think they're going to score a lot of runs either. It's going to be like Jose and the rest of them, which is kind of how it's been. And I don't know that he's going to get the credit for that. But also, I picked this guy to win the Triple Crown, which is going to kind of, feather in the cap. I've got Yordan Alvarez winning the MVP. Woo. I have Yordan hitting. I have Yordan hitting 50+ bombs. I have him over 125 RBIs, and I have him batting around 315. And I have him winning the AL Triple Crown, and I have him winning the AL MVP en route to another dominant year in the AL West for the Houston Astros.
The dude's a machine. I would scale my batting average back slightly on Yordan Alvarez.
He batted 306 last year coming off the wrist problem.
He batted 306 coming off a wrist problem, and he no longer has to worry about a defensive shift. So maybe I'm the one who needs to pump up his batting average numbers. That's a great pick, and I love the dude because he's a fucking robot. And I love watching cyborgs crush baseballs at 500 feet over the center field batter's eye in the postseason. That's a great pick. That's a good pick. Why didn't I think of that? Damn,
we got our bases covered.
Great pick.
All right, let's shift gears to the NL. I'm curious to hear what you have here. NL MVP, bud.
I'm gonna change my IL MVP really quick. Better. Switching my vote. Listen, it's got to stay in St. Louis, right? Paul Goldie wins it last year with just the phenomenal season that Goldie was able to put together in St. Louis. I looked across the diamond and I really see from a sheer highlight reel ability, Nolan Arenado having a monster year. I'm not going to say Triple Crown. I don't know if his home run numbers will be the best in the National League, but certainly where this lineup is, and we'll talk more about St. Louis coming up here in just a little bit on my series preview, there's not a weak spot in this lineup anymore in St. Louis. I think that there was at times last year when they were still trying to figure out which of their minor league prospects they wanted to give the start to ultimately for the future. There was some weak spots in the lineup, and there was situations where Nolan Arenado had nobody hitting behind him, and so pitchers weren't worried and could throw completely different to him. They're going to have to pitch to Arenado, and if they do, he's going to put the ball in play. And again, he doesn't hit rocket shots, he doesn't hit moon bombs, he doesn't hit the monstrous bat flip home runs that we see in Slam Diego, but he rings one off the wall and he's going to have doubles constantly, and he picks up extra base hits, and he's always on the ball, and his batting average from the career standpoint nearing that 300. I think it goes over 300 this year in terms of batting average for Nolan Arenado. I think the RBIs pick up enough. I think St. Louis finishes enough games ahead of the National League Central to where it's a no-brainer. It goes back to St. Louis. It just goes across the diamond from first to third. Arenado's my MVP.
I like that pick. I really do. He was in consideration for me, and I like this question my dad
That's
posed.
a great question. Did you Google it yet?
Because I haven't Googled it because I want to frame it in a way, because I know Bonds won a couple in a row. I think he won 3 in a row, actually. But 2 different MVP winners in consecutive years. I would be really curious to know if that ever happened. Okay. I'm thinking maybe Yankees back in like 20s, 30s, maybe something along those lines, or even some of those dominant, even the Cards, right? Cards has some dominant teams in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I don't know, to be honest. Are you Googling it?
I am currently Googling it.
Okay.
We'll see. But keep on while I Google. You do your NL MVP.
So I'll talk about my NL MVP while you do some research for us. Good question, Dad. I had a few guys I had considered here as well. I like Arenado, Goldschmidt, the defending MVP. I was a little more bullish on Arenado, but he wasn't my pick. I thought if anybody from the Cardinals this year, I think Arenado's going to have a great year. I thought about Mookie Betts out in LA, possibly with the Dodgers, because I think he's going to be kind of the pivot point for that lineup. I thought about the Braves. Is it maybe an Acuna or, they I don't know, Riley along those lines. But I settled on a guy who I think is coming off maybe the kind of welcome to the world performance from the WBC, who I think is going to hit 30 bombs, knock in 100 runs, score 100 runs, have 200 hits, and probably steal 30 bases. And we're going to be talking a lot about Trey Turner throughout this season.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's going to ride the momentum he created from the WBC. And I think that in that lineup, he's going to have a lot of protection behind him. And they're not, obviously, he's not going to hit in the 4 holes. So he's not going to be 120, 130 RBI guy. But I think Trey Turner, what he did during the WBC, on top of being a Gold Glove caliber shortstop, Trey Turner's my pick for MVP in the NL.
I like that a lot. Fun facts. So you mentioned a little bit about the Barry Bonds going back to back to back. He actually went back to back 4 straight.
4, not 3.
Yeah, 4 straight. Then Albert won for St. Louis, and that was followed. Then this, by the way, is most recent history of the MVP awards. We could go back, I believe, in the 70s. It was Johnny Bench and Pete Rose for the Cincinnati Reds back with the Red Machine. But the Phillies, interestingly enough, you just got done talking about the Trey Turner. It was remember the big monster Ryan Howard.
Oh God, and Jimmy Rollins,
and directly followed by Jimmy Rollins the following year.
See, listen, we got the best research team in the game. Great question, Dad. Ty got you the answer.
That's good Phillies stuff. I was actually generally curious when he answered.
Yeah.
I didn't prep for that.
Absolutely, me neither. Good thing we got Google. All right. Ty is let's tear the Band-Aid off. Okay. Let's make our way too early predictions here. Way too early predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start. So we started all the awards in the AL. Mm-hmm. We're going to start in the NL. Who do you have winning the NL this year? I think we've all were pretty bullish on the Braves in terms of their regular season performance, but that doesn't always translate to postseason success. Do you have them riding the wave all the way to the World Series?
Who beats them in a series?
Good
question. Like my honest to God thing is, okay, so if it's Atlanta and St. Louis in a winner take all 1 game scenario, I think we got a shot.
Any given Sunday, right?
we play 7 games throughout the course of a week, and we got to go up against that lineup for 7 fucking times. Holy shit, that's hard. I don't know where Atlanta loses in the postseason. Again, I'll throw St. Louis in the mix because I think that their lineup is as strong. I think their pitching rotation is maybe a little bit weaker than Atlanta's, but I think it's comparable. I don't think it's in the West this year. And I think for once, I think we can finally say that maybe the West is a little bit behind us. But I think that honestly, again, toe to toe, and I would love to throw St. Louis in this mix. I do think St. Louis vastly improves upon their disappointing exit a year ago at the hands of the Phillies, because I do think St. Louis can get to the NLS this season, and I think they'll face Atlanta, and I think it'll be a handshake. Congratulations, like, we ain't beating you. I'm sorry. As much as I bleed Cardinal red, I see no path forward or path around what is going to be a monster dynasty for years to come, and it starts this season for the Braves.
Yeah, and it's amazing to think that their shortstop is in AAA right now. Right, like their shortstop of the future. They're like, you struggled a little in the spring. We're gonna send you down so you can figure it out. Like, wow. I'm with you. I don't know who beats them in a long series, and I don't expect them to be in the wild card in a short series. So right now, roster composition today, I'm going to hold out. Right. When we talk trade deadline,
right.
If the Dodgers are super aggressive, make a bunch of moves, or another team is super aggressive, makes a bunch of moves,
100%.
Could change the dynamic, sure, right?
100%.
But right now, the roster composition and what the Braves can roll out 1 through 9, and then roll out on the mound too, right? I just don't know who beats them in a long series. So if you're going to get them, you better get them in the wild card in a 3-game series and hope you can steal one from them in Atlanta. But yeah, I'm with you. Atlanta just feels like it's kind of a head and shoulders thing with Atlanta and the rest of the NL. All right, let's shift. AL, I think it's a little more wide open in the AL.
So wide open.
Yeah. So I'm curious who you have winning the AL this year.
Okay. And we'll slowly build into the AL winner, and it will slowly build out of what is going to happen to the AL winner after the World Series, because I need to make sure that we're very well aware of the direction and the trajectory that I have this team following the 2023 season. And I think that's very important to know. My first initial thought was, obviously 2 strong teams come to mind in terms of the lineup composition and what they've been able to do. And the Guardians with their postseason run that they had a year ago, and you throw Tito into the mix, and Cleveland makes for a very sexy pick in the American League. Even Tampa, I thought made a slight sexiness because of the way that they just play baseball, and the fact that if they can get to the postseason, which I ultimately think Tampa can do, I think Tampa's a strong team to progress through the postseason because they know how to get it done in October.
And they can just roll out 45 guys that throw 100.
Literally. and next man up mentality. They have that ability. Yeah. Tampa came into my mind. Toronto obviously came into my mind with the offensive firepower that lineup possesses. But at the end of the day, when it came down to the series, so you got to beat a team in 7, it is exactly where I'm at with Atlanta. There's going to be some sexy teams that make this push. The American League, in my opinion, will be a more competitive postseason to watch. And quite frankly, will be a better regular season baseball to watch than the National League, which I have never said, by the way, as a National League guy. It's really hard for me to say, actually, I'm super excited to see what the American League has to offer this year. Like, those are words that don't come out of my mouth very often. So we got to realize that this is a pretty historic event here. I do ultimately have Houston going to the World Series again. And everybody and rightfully so should go, oh God, again. But here's the deal. We're going to get to the World Series, and I'm going to go ahead and sneak it out ahead of time. You're probably going to be like, okay, well, you have those teams who you have winning. I know that's coming. I have a demolition job in the World Series that sends a team tucking their tail in so far between their legs that they rebuild and end up blowing up a franchise because of it. This embarrassment in the World Series at the hands of the Atlanta Braves will ultimately be the last time that we have to worry about Houston, because they will realize how far away they are from World Championship baseball that they will say, screw it, we're going back to the drawing board. I have Houston getting there, but then I have them getting annihilated.
Sweep?
Way too early to predict that. Hell yes, they have a sweep.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, in the AL, I think that the 3 division winners all have a good shot. I also think that the wild card winner in the AL East, Tampa Bay, has a good shot because of how many arms they can roll out.
Right.
I love Seattle's pluckiness. I love Baltimore's youth, but neither of those teams are ready for a World Series run. So it came down to me to where I worry about Cleveland with Tristan McKenzie potentially being a lingering thing this year.
Get it.
So I did eliminate them based on that kind of shakiness, right? So it came down to Toronto and it came down to Houston for me. And I actually have Toronto going to the World Series this year, and here's why. I love the moves they made in their lineup, but also in their rotation and in their bullpen. In terms of two-hit Wit, I think is a huge addition to that lineup. A great defensive option, but also a guy that gets on base and causes havoc on base. I like how deep they are in the outfield this year. I also think that George Springer had a really bad year last year, and he's primed for a bounce back.
Yep.
I don't know that he's going to light the world on fire, but I don't think he's going to bat 210 with 500 strikeouts. And Vlad Guerrero, for as good as he was last year, he had a bit of a down year. So I think that Toronto figures it out, and I think Matt Chapman's going to have a better year this year. I just think last year there were so many expectations on this team. It was a little bit of the Juan Soto effect for the Blue Jays as a whole. And I look at their rotation too, and I think Manoah at the top, I love the guy. I think Chris Bassett was a great addition. I think he's a guy that you slot him in as your third starter behind Manoah and Gausman, and I think he can win you games as a third starter. And then you figure out the last two, and you just hope you mash, right? And you've got the lineup to do it. In a 7-game series, you don't need 5 starters either, right? So you could short start 3 if the schedule works out in your favor, or you go 4 deep and you get one good game out of Barrios or Kikuchi, or you may, even if it is Hyunjin Ryu potentially in a playoff series. I love the Blue Jays lineup, how long it is, and the composition of that lineup, how they're going to put pressure on teams. And the guys that struggled last year, I expect them to bounce back this year. So they're my pick in the AL.
That's great, and I love the point that you made about you don't have to have the 5-man rotation in the postseason, because that makes even Atlanta even more scary. To think that, oh my God, thank God we got by Max and Spencer and Charlie Morton, and then it's like, oh, guess what? We're back on short rest. You get Max and Strider and Charlie Morton again. Have fun. They're so good.
Oh, so good. So to get to my World Series pick, Joe Carter's not coming through that building. It's Atlanta, honestly. If I'm looking at it today based on where these two teams are, while I do love what the Blue Jays did in terms of changing kind of the complexion of their lineup and the rotation a little bit, the Braves didn't have to make moves. The moves they made were signing their own. The moves they made were locking dudes up. And Acuna, I expect him to be in midseason form here because the injury last year sapped him of a lot of what we expected from him. And that rotation, dude. I mean, 1 through 3, they're filth. You had any serviceable 4th starter there in Atlanta. Take your pick of the two to three guys they've got left that can fill that spot. I don't know who beats them in a 7-game series. I just don't. I don't think they sweep the Blue Jays. I don't want to be mean to the Blue Jays like I want to be mean to the Astros like you were, because they
That's fair.
deserve every bit of it. But I've got the Braves winning the World Series over the Blue Jays. I don't know, maybe a 4-2. It is too early to predict, right?
For sure. For sure. So not a repeat of 1992 where it was a role reversal.
Yeah.
And the Braves getting beat by the.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Joe Carter's not coming through them doors.
That's right.
All right, bud.
Wow.
So I want to ask you a question, and I might even, you know what? I'm going to do it. We're going to have our first fair foul of the year. Give me one moment to pull up the video. All right. So I have two, and I know I didn't prime you with these, so I apologize for putting you on the spot here. But we're gonna have fun. Let's doing it live.
We're making sure the audience is very well aware of this. Whatever the hell comes out of my mouth, it needs to be addressed with the fact that we did not show prep. In fact, our show prep literally happened at 7 my time, 7:57, 3 minutes before the pod started. We're like, you want to do? We're good? Okay, let's roll.
Yep. I had a long day.
Fair foul on the spot. I like it.
We got fair foul, then we're going to talk about our opening week series. But first fair foul question for you, bud. Fair or foul? Major League Baseball got the pitch clock thing right.
Knee-jerk reaction is fair. I've actually, the limited amount of spring training games I've watched, I haven't seen the disruption and obviously we see the clips that get brought to light, and they've been a handful. How many pitches get thrown throughout the course of every single at bat in a Major League Baseball game? And you're taking two specific examples to make a mockery out of Major League Baseball.
There's 250 to 300 pitches thrown in the course of a game.
Listen, they got it right. And again, I'll say they got it right. And I'll say till the day I die, we got to stop calling it a pitch clock. It's get in the batter's box and be ready to go clock. And that, to me, even when you take a look at the data and the statistics, and you could throw all of the numbers about the time that this is shaved off, but to me, it's just a more watchable product. I am not going down and glancing at my phone between pitches because I know I have time to do that. That's where we were at from baseball, and again, I'll watch a 4-hour game. I'll watch a 5-hour game, especially if I'm at the ballpark. I don't care how long it goes. I want it to go 27 innings. Like that shit doesn't bother me. What bothers me is that we have so long of gaps between the action that we are, because of the way we are formed from a society standpoint, getting plugged in and back on our phone and checking on Facebook. And then while I'm checking on Facebook, it's a swing and a drive home run. Oh, shit. Like, if you wouldn't have stalled for 15 fucking minutes, maybe I would have been able to watch that home run. It's improving the game. And as much as we hated the rule changes, they're improving the game right now from a watchability standpoint. I'm saying fair on the getting the damn batter's box and swing clock.
I'm saying fair from a number of standpoints. And I don't love giving Rob Manfred and this regime for Major League Baseball any credit.
There was chest pain. There's chest pain.
For me to give them credit, there is chest pain for sure. But they nailed this, honestly. And I don't know how many adjustments they're going to really have to make to this. I think there's a couple. From the standpoint of guys gaming it with Scherzer and Nestor, a couple guys are trying to, force pit batters to step out and try to quick pitch them at the end of the clock and stuff like that. Like, all that's gamesmanship to me, though, to be honest. I don't have any problems with it. And I've had this argument with multiple people this offseason who are baseball fans, some more serious than others. And the complaints I hear from them are, well, they're doing this to game this. I'm like, think about how much gamesmanship goes into the game of baseball. You're talking from your leadoff at just a little bit of the science, quote unquote science behind base running at second base. you take a step or two behind second base and then get a lead off, and you can get a longer lead off because the depth perception makes it look like you're not as far off and the pitcher's less likely to throw to second base, when in reality, you're a few feet closer to third base, right? So gamesmanship, right? Stealing signs without hitting trash cans, gamesmanship. The hidden ball trick, gamesmanship. All this stuff, dude. The game of baseball is about gamesmanship, and that's what makes it interesting. And I love it that Scherzer was doing that because it's going to force batters to get in the fucking box and hit, be ready to hit. I love what you said. It's not a pitch clock. And I said pitch clock because that's what they called it.
Right.
But it's a game clock. And what it does is it makes the game more enticing, more exciting. It's going to get eyes and keep eyes on the field, on the television set, on the game, maybe in the ballpark that would not have been on the game previously. Because as you said, I can watch a 4-hour game. And I put it this way for a buddy of mine today. We were talking 26 minutes is what it shaved off the average spring training game this year. The biggest impact for me is exactly what we see with college football. College football games are 4 to 4.5 hour affairs. Don't feel it because action is nonstop. There's no huddle. Clock stops after first downs, which elongates the game, but the teams are just going.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it.
And that's what this feels like with baseball. Yep. It isn't necessarily about the length of the game. It's about the length of the dead time of the game. And this game clock, I'm going to start calling it game clock, is making the game more watchable for that reason.
To put it in another perspective, 8 hours at work is a hell of a lot longer than 8 hours with Kate Upton. Like, just doesn't exist.
Right. That's a win.
It's the same thing.
All right. So my second fair foul is fair or foul. Major League Baseball is going to be forced to change the shift rules because of the Boston Red Sox in moving the outfielders.
More power to them. I think they're going to be ultimately forced to change. I'll say fair, though, be forced to change the shift rules. But I'll say fair and I'll twist it to you. I think this is the first rule that they say, you know what, we had an idea and it failed dramatically. You as managers and as franchises or franchisees or whatever you want to say, you should have the ability to put guys wherever the fuck you want to put them because it's a baseball field and here's the dimensions. And as long as you stay in the field of play, that's your strategy. That's your MO. I see it being the first of the rules to go because I think teams are going to still figure out a way like Boston to do their thing and to make their shift happen. And ultimately at the end of the day, we'll go back to the free for all that we were in. But I don't think it happens right away. And I don't see an immediate step in from baseball on this Boston deal. But I think at the end of the day, the shift one is still the biggest one that we have question marks on, not only from a fan base perspective, but I think even some of the players and certainly the managers. The biggest cry that I'm hearing from managers is, why can't I put the guys where I fucking want to put guys? Like, get it, dude. Like 100, get it. Yep. This one's the first rule to change, and it changes by going away. Poof.
I'm with you on fair. But I'm not with you on baseball going down without.
Come on, let's scrap it. We all hate it.
I hate it. I think eventually it's going to get scrapped, but baseball's not going down without a fight. Sure. I see this playing out in the following manner. They're going to regulate where outfielders can be, and then managers are going to find a way to game that, or they're going to realize, like, now I can't play no doubles defense. Now I can't play the line. Now I can't do this. Now I can't do that. And we're talking 2, maybe 3-year process. By 2025, 2026, I think the shift goes away. But I think baseball tries to Frankenstein it a little bit over the next couple of years because they don't want to admit that they were wrong about the shift rule. And I'll flip it back to the previous question or the previous fair foul. And I will say that with the game clock, the shift no longer matters because the shift was a big reason why games had so much dead time on top of pitchers, batters, their pre-pitch routines, pre-at-bat routines. But the shift had a lot of issues in terms of the way the game progressed. With the game clock, I think that goes away, and eventually Major League Baseball eats its crow and says, okay, we fucked up.
Right.
But I don't think it'll be right away. I don't think they're going to go down without a fight.
Like, shit, I got 15 seconds to get from third base to right field for this particular defensive shift.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so let's
exactly.
I get it. I get it. I like that. That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
All right, well, let's shift gears. Let's talk opening week. So anybody who didn't tune in last year that's tuning in now, every week we like to preview a series for one reason or another. It might be two teams that are close in the standings. It might be two teams of historic, reasons. It might be the history series, right? When they play at the Field of Dreams, along those lines. So this year for opening week, Ty, you wanted to highlight a little bit of a battle of the birds.
Nice segue,
if you will.
Beautiful segue.
Cards Jays opening week. What do you think, bud?
I think first of all, obviously we're doing a series preview opening week. It was pretty easy to say that I'm not going to be watching too many other things other than Cardinals baseball this weekend. So if I'm going to do a series preview and then a review on next week's pod, I better have damn well watched the baseball game. So let's make it a Cardinals theme. But then I opened up this schedule and it's like, holy shit. We got a banger right off the bat. We're playing your World Series runner-up, my AL East champion. The lineups. This is a sexy matchup for opening week, and to be honest with you, in terms of the entire slate of baseball games for your opening series for opening weekend, this one takes the cake. I mean, this to me is a 1-2 scenario. Two teams that are going to be playing late October baseball, playing front and center in late March is awesome. And opening day in St. Louis is awesome. And if you've never been a part of the spectacle that is, it is a parade of amazing Clydesdale after Clydesdale after Clydesdale after Clydesdale with Cardinal greats on the horses, and it's tradition, and they play Here Comes the King on the organ, and there's so many great things about St. Louis opening day baseball that the game almost becomes irrelevant after that. Like there's a 2-hour ceremony that leads up to first pitch, and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, we're playing a baseball game. Like I completely forgot and got lost in Cardinal history. That's a hell of an atmosphere for the Jays to come out and have to play on opening day. I'll be very curious to see how this series goes. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think this is one where Toronto could take the edge. To be honest with you, over the course of the weekend, they'll play Thursday, they'll take the off day Friday, and then hit Saturday and Sunday for the 3-game series. And I can see Toronto winning 2 out of 3, but I think St. Louis picks up the opening day win just because of the atmosphere that's created. I think that propels them to like 7 wins or 7 runs before they even start. So, I'm thinking overs, obviously opening day for the Cards, but the series is a sexy matchup. And then, for the weekend, boy, despite the great offenses that are coming to play here, I think it's going to be a struggle to find runs. And I think we're going to see a defensive battles, and we're going to see this 3-4 classic style matchup. But I can tell you from this standpoint, as a Cardinals baseball fan, traditionally it's opening up against a division rival, not a team that experts have picked to finish extremely high in the American League. There's an added buzz in the city right now with this Cardinals baseball team, and the expectations are extremely high for both of these teams. And with those expectations, I think we're going to have almost playoff atmosphere baseball for opening weekend, and that's fantastic. And it's to me, it's the can't miss series of the weekend. It truly is. There's no weak spots on any of the lineups. I've already mentioned the depth on both of the lineups is fantastic. When you have Santiago Espinal, like the fourth best player on your bench, you're doing something right, Toronto. When you have Juan Yepes as the fourth best player on your bench and Dylan Carlson maybe as the third, you're doing something right, St. Louis. It's going to be fantastic to watch, and it's going to be great baseball, and I'm looking forward to it. Go Cards.
I'll tell you another thing I noticed about the schedule. You mentioned the Cards, Jays, and I'm going to bring this picture up again because it's fucking tremendous.
Thank you. Another thing found on Google.
Yes. However, you guys open up against the Jays, and then you face the Braves.
Yep.
What a fucking opening week.
And then it's on the road to Milwaukee. You're probably going to be your division rival this year. Not sure. Maybe Pittsburgh jumps. But my goodness, the first 10 days out of the gate for St. Louis are like,
oh my God,
bangers.
Yeah.
So your World Series champ and World Series runner-up are the first two teams St. Louis has right out of the gates. And realistically, like an 0-6 start is not out of the question for the St. Louis Cardinals. I still think even if they start slow because of the schedule and the way this is front-loaded here in the month of March, I still think they'll bounce back and they'll be just fine. But this has got some early – we're going to get an early test.
You're going to be testing that panic button early.
Yeah.
Potentially. You're at home, though, so could go your way.
Yeah. Have you seen the Braves lineup? Do I need to repeat?
No. We're pretty clear.
Pretty damn good.
Yeah. All right. So my series that I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to put out a public service announcement here. I promise you. This is not a homer pick, and this is probably the last time that the Nationals will be highlighted at all. However, it's opening day.
Hell yes.
Hope eternal. As Ty alluded to at the beginning of the show, I'm going to be in the ballpark. So I had to highlight this series only for that reason. It's going to be a bloodbath. Patrick Corbin is on the mound for opening day for the Nats, and I fully expect double digits from the Braves. I actually told my two buddies that I'm going with, we should have gotten outfield seats. We got seats along the first baseline or along the home dugout because that's usually, you sit near the home dugout in a baseball game. But with Patrick Corbin, if I'd have known Patrick Corbin was going to be the opening day starter, I expected Mackenzie Gore as the opening day starter. But with Sunday, Corbin going, it's going to be, it's crazy. It's Mackenzie's going to be the third starter. It's Corbin going first, then Josiah Gray, who's had a tremendous spring. I have high hopes for him. And then Mackenzie Gore on Sunday. But with Corbin on the mound, we should have gotten some outfield seats. We might have cut a home run from Acuna or Riley or any of the other monsters in the Braves lineup, Matt Olson, and the list goes on and on and on. But it's still opening day, and I'm still going to be in the ballpark. And for any of you from the D.C., Maryland area, I am grabbing a Ben's Chili Bowl half smoked with chili and cheese. Nothing better than ballpark food.
ESPN, I was literally just going to say, what's the best ballpark food at Nationals Park? Because it's my favorite thing to do at ballparks is get the signature ballpark food.
Ben's half smoke chili and cheese. So they call them half smokes. They're like a sausage basically, or a bratwurst. More of the consistency of like a bratwurst, but they're like half pork sausage, half hot dog, and they make them into this one concoction, and their chili is fucking tremendous. It is so Ben's Chili Bowl is literally famous for their chili, but they make these half smokes that they put the chili and cheese on. Oh,
dude.
Unbelievable.
I got.
Yeah.
I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Looks good.
It's so good. It's so good. All right. Well, we highlighted some series here in the opening week, but I know you're excited. give me some closing thoughts here for opening week. We got baseball back, bud. We've done now 7 of these preview episodes, previewed every division, talked about some spring training. But God damn it, we've got real, meaningful baseball that counts in the standings starting tomorrow. What are your closing thoughts?
We got real baseball starting tomorrow. You love the ballpark food. I love the ballpark drinks. And with the ballpark drinks come, of course, a little ballpark drinking game. And what better way to celebrate the great American pastime than literally putting a 12-pack of beer in a cooler and strolling it up to the couch so you don't even have to get off the seat. And I've invented a drinking game just for you, one that will actually blow through your quota in the cooler before the 3rd inning. I guarantee you, you will have the time of your life here on opening day. Do not do this with hard alcohol. It's a horrible idea. Here we go. A little drinking bingo for you on opening day baseball. Every time they mention the shift regulations, take a drink. Every time they mention the pitch clock regulations, take a drink. Every time they talk about those big bases, take a drink. And you will be drunk by the 3rd inning.
By the 3rd inning. But it's a hell of a way to start